And good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersey Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's summer here in New Jersey. It's 80
It,
degrees
it
today.
it's summer here too. It's quite a beautiful summer with all the leaves changing.
What's the temperature there in Pennsylvania?
80 degrees.
80 degrees there too. Wow. Um, anyway, today is October 22nd. So it's actually 2 weeks to the election. It's 2 weeks and 2 weeks. It's going to be on a Tuesday, November 5th, and we're recording this on Tuesday the 22nd, so it's exactly 14 days. I can't tell you how happy I'm going to be when this election is over. I'm so sick of TV of ads, political ads on TV. I'm just totally zoned out. Um, Anyway, we got so much to talk about. I had some late last minute additions. I doubt we're going to get to everything um, I have on the agenda. I start in the morning, but it takes me an hour and a half to put together this 30-minute podcast. So I started and the list kept getting bigger and bigger. And so anyway, I've added things. I didn't drop any things, but I doubt I'll get them. Anyway, so here's what we're going to try to squeeze in. Our quote of the week is from Canadian author Margaret Atwood about the importance of separating feelings from behavior. In our stupidest thing of the week, I started with one contender, then I had two contenders, and then late this afternoon I came up with a third contender. So we have three candidates for stupidest thing I've heard all week, including one by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has made our stupidest thing I've heard all week, and you'll have to decide which you think is the stupidest thing I've heard all week. Then I have the most outrageous thing I've heard all week. It's a story about that I guarantee you didn't. By the way, we call this the situation when Jerzee Joe. It's news and perspective that you won't hear on TV. And I guarantee you that 75% of the things I'm going to talk about today, you did not hear on TV, or maybe you only heard one side. And one of the things I know you didn't hear about on TV was a story about a female Marine Corps veteran who was forced to deplane from a Delta flight that she had just boarded, and she was forced to change her clothes. They told her, if you don't change your clothes, you can't get back on the flight. And I'm going to tell you what they found so objectionable about the T-shirt she was wearing, which I think is incredibly stupid, but it's also outrageous. Um, we'll also tell you how dramatically the cost of educating a K through 12 students has risen since 1970, which was 74 years ago, and the impact that dramatic rise in the inflation adjusting cost has had on academic scores, and it's truly tragic.
Wait, from
Uh,
what year was that, did you say?
1970, back when I was in high school.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what's happened to
But
the.
that was like 50 years ago, not 70 years ago.
I'm sorry, 50. I apologize, 50 years ago, and we're going to tell you the cost how what's happened to the cost per student per year, inflation adjusted, and the impact that's had on test scores. We have a clip of a recorded phone call with officials from the CDC admitting that they had published bogus information about the COVID vaccine on their website. Now, you heard about that on the evening news. That was a big story, right?
Yep.
And of
Yep.
course you didn't. Of course you didn't. Uh, the CDC admitting, yeah, we published bogus information that never made it on the evening news. Here's another story you didn't hear in the evening news. We're going to tell you about a group of teenagers. These are young girls who beat an elderly disabled man to death and why they did it. Truly just horrendous story that I know you didn't hear in the news. In our health and science segment, we'll tell you why you shouldn't regularly burn candles in your home, particularly if you have young children. Do you routinely light
I
candles in your home?
do, especially in the wintertime, pretty much every single night.
Well, you may want to listen, pay real close attention to this. And if you have friends with young children, you might want to share this story with them. Um, if we have time, I'll tell you about a new world record for the longest rifle shot ever recorded. It took place last month in Wyoming. Truly astounding feat. If we have time, we'll tell you about a new method being used by thieves in the Chicago area to steal merchandise before it even gets to the store. Now, we've talked to the store about these mass raids where 25 people go in the store and just, strip the shelves bare. Well, the thieves have now
Yeah.
decided to not wait until the merchandise gets to the store to start stealing it. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Florida, where a homeowner shoots and kills two of three home invaders and wounds the third. So a pretty full schedule. All right. So here's our quote of the week from Canadian author Margaret Atwood, and you tell me if you can relate to this. She said, "You can't help what you feel, but you can help how you behave." Um, and I can relate to that. We all have feelings. We have anger, we have sadness, But if you don't have any self-control, you just like you ever meet people they say they wear their feelings on their sleeve,
Yep. Yep.
and uh, I mean, can you relate to? Do you know anybody like that? The minute they,
Yeah.
yep. How about yourself? Do you try to control your
I
behavior?
try. I
Okay,
try.
okay, and it can be very detrimental if you can't control. If you can't control how you behave, if you let your feelings take control of you, it's truly going to hurt you both in your personal relationships and your professional relationships. So again, the quote is, "You can't help what you feel, but you can help how you behave." And again, I think that's great advice for both your personal life and your professional life. All right. So let's talk about the stupidest thing I've heard all week. And we have three contenders, and producer Susan will let you cast the first vote. The first one is in California. A man who was a trans said wanted to be a woman. I don't know whether he's. Do you call that a transgender woman or a transgender man? A
I
man who wants to be a woman.
I think that's a transgender woman.
Okay. Well, at the time he was a biological man. So anyway, he was convicted of killing a couple. If you Google this, he's also known as the yacht killer. What he did, he was trying to get money for a sex change operation. So he went to the marina and he found this yacht with two people on it, and he had a stun gun, a man and a couple. He subdued them with a stun gun, and while they were still alive, he tied them both to the boat's anchor and then threw the anchor overboard while they were still alive, drowning them tied to the ship's anchor. And while they were drowning, he opened a beer from the ship's refrigerator and sat there and had a beer on the deck of the yacht while they were drowning tied to the ship's anchor. So pretty heinous crime, right?
Yeah.
Well, and he was referred to as the yacht killer. If anybody wants to Google yacht killer, California. And he was born John Jacobson Jr. Anyway, he was convicted and sentenced to death row. I'm sorry, serving life without parole. He was initially sentenced to death, but he wound up being life without parole. Um, Last year, nearly 2 decades after the murder of the killer, as an inmate of the California Correctional Facility, he put in a request for a sex change operation, and courtesy of the California taxpayers, he got it. They paid for over $100,000 in surgery to give this convicted killer serving life without a parole a sex change operation, including, removing his genitals and breast augmentation. And the icing on the cake is that after that was completed, he requested and was granted a transfer to a woman's female prison. So, how would you feel if you were a taxpayer in the state of California and
Yeah, and I know that this is one of the things that Trump is using against Kamala to say, as a political I've seen a lot of commercials about this.
okay, well, you got to admit that's pretty stupid, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, our second contender of the week, we haven't. Now, Donald Trump, as we said before, Donald Trump does a lot of stupid stuff, and we typically don't play them here because you hear about him on the evening news, always covers his stupid stuff. But I think this one uh, is just so incredibly stupid. We're going to play it for you. This is Trump at a rally talking about Arnold Palmer, one of the greatest golfers of all time. And he's talking about the size of Arnold Palmer's penis at a rally. Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
But Arnold Palmer was all man. And I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this guy, this is a guy that was all man. His man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God, that's unbelievable. I had to say it. I had to say it.
So Donald Trump talking about the size of Arnold Palmer's penis. That's our second contender.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's not something you talk about in public. That's something, I mean, you
no,
talk about that's locker room talk.
that's locker room talk. It's so incredibly stupid to talk about something like that at a rally. And our third contender is this. Elon Musk was telling about um, the regulatory hoops he had to jump over before he was given permission to launch his very first SpaceX rocket. And I don't have an audio, but here's a quote from Elon Musk. He said, I've got a bunch of nutty stories about regulation. Uh, uh, One of them is that SpaceX had to do this study to see if Starship booster would hit a shark. And I'm like, it's a big ocean. There are a lot of sharks. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. So he said, fine, we'll do the analysis. Can you give us the shark population data? Well, they said, no, we can't give you that shark data. Well, then we're okay. We're in a bit of quandary. How do we solve the shark probability issue? And the FAA said, well, we could give it to our Western division, but we don't trust them. And I'm like, am I in a comedy sketch here? Eventually, we got the shark population data and we could run the analysis, say, yeah, the sharks are going to be fine, but they wouldn't let us proceed with the launch until we did this crazy shark analysis. By the way, it was an analysis that that NASA, which had does launched dozens and dozens of rockets, never had to do, but all of a sudden he had to do it. Now, so then he goes on. Then we thought, okay, now we're done with this crazy analysis. But then they said, well, what about the whales? When you look at a picture of the Pacific, what percent of the surface area do you see as whale? If the Starship did hit a whale, honestly, it's like the whale had it coming because the odds are so low. And in the final destination, they said, well, what if the rocket goes underwater and then explodes and the whales suffer hearing damage? That was the hoops he had to jump through to get permission to launch his first. Now, so between Elon Musk having to do the research to say, what if your booster kills a shark, Trump talking about Arnold Palmer's penis, or the inmate on death row getting a transgender surgery at taxpayer expense, how would you rank those one, two, three?
Yeah, I don't know. The Donald Trump comments, that's locker room talk. That's definitely not public forum
Okay,
conversation.
okay, but in terms of
And the
being,
taxpayers, man, I don't know.
yeah. Well, listeners, you please tell us what you think of those are the three. Donald Trump telling that story at a rally. So again, the story itself, I don't think the story itself is stupid, but to tell it at a rally, I think is
Yeah,
stupid.
absolutely.
Right. Elon Musk having to do this study about what if your rocket booster hits a shark, um, and then the inmate getting a sex change operation. Listeners, please tell us what you think is the most stupid of those three things. All right. So you want to move on to the most outrageous thing I heard all week that
Yeah,
you
what's the
didn't hear
most
on the.
outrageous thing?
All right, you didn't hear this on the news, but I think you should have. So there was a female Marine Corps veteran. She was she boarded a Delta flight, and a flight attendant came up to her and told her she would not be able to plane and not be able to continue on the flight, and unless she removed her quote threatening T-shirt. She was wearing a T-shirt, and they felt the wording was threatening. You know what the words on her T-shirt were?
What?
Do not give in to the war within. End veteran suicide. Do not give in to the war within. End veteran suicide. Meaning, if you're a veteran thinking about suicide,
Yeah.
don't give in.
And how is this offensive? This is like a good message to be
It
spreading.
is. I think it's a great message. It's a great message of encouragement to veterans that if you're having suicidal thoughts, do not give in to the war within. And
Absolutely. Why? How is this offensive?
well, that's why I think it's the most outrageous thing. Anyway, so they took her off the plane. She took her carry-on bag. She had another shirt in her carry-on luggage. In the jet bridge, she changed her shirt in the jet bridge and they let her take her seat. But I think that's the most outrageous thing I've
And
heard.
what airline was this again?
Delta.
Delta. Yeah, Delta should be ashamed of
They
themselves.
should, yes. So again, her shirt simply said, "Do not give in to the war within, end veteran suicide." And they
Yeah.
told her that it was her T-shirt was threatening, and she couldn't continue on the flight unless she removed it. So that's the most outrageous thing I've heard all week. All right, let's talk about the cost of education. So a study was put out by the U.S. Department of Education, Digest of Education Statistics, and I've got the graph and the link if you want to put this up on the
Yep.
website. So they go back to what it cost per student in 1970. Now they give the statistics for the entire cost for K through 12, all 13 years. So K through 12 is 13 years. So if you break it down cost per student per year on an inflation-adjusted basis. Okay, that would have been $782 per student per year. And if we take that $782 per student per year and we update it to 2021, which is the most recent current student per cost per student per year, that 782 would have, on an inflation, would have been 5,845 per student in 2021. So, or basically 13 times 5,000 or 13 times 6,000 is basically almost $70,000 to take a student through K through 12. So that 5,845 is the inflation adjusted cost per student per year. You know what the actual cost per student per year in 2021 was?
What?
16,280. So remember, had we been
Per child.
triple.
Wow.
We went from 5,845 to 16,280. And here's the sad thing. Test scores have not only not improved, test scores have declined over that same 50-year period. So here's the question. So why has the inflation adjusted cost of educating our students tripled in 50 years?
That's an excellent question. Because our cost is increasing and our scores, I mean, I feel like Americans are getting dumber.
Yeah, I mean, 16,280 per year. That's basically the cost to go to college these days. If you want to go to Rutgers State University, Rutgers, what's the current in-state tuition at Penn State?
Don't quote me, but I want to say it's around $10,000 for in-state.
Right. So we're spending, and I know Rutgers is
They're probably comparable.
Yeah, 10 or 12. So we're spending 16,280 per student per year to get that's K through 12. So what the hell's wrong and I can tell you this, the amount of administrative overhead is just incredible. When I went to school, I can remember distinctly the administrative staff was the principal, 2 clerical assistants, and we had a guidance counselor. 4. Everybody else in that school, besides those 4 people, was a teacher. And the Board of Education office, which I had to go to on a couple occasions, I don't think there were more than 6 people in the entire Board of Education office. And today you've got boards of education that have 100 people in them. You've got schools that have, 10, 12 people in high schools who are not teachers. So I think that it's too much administrative. And by the way, a lot of this is done by the federal government because schools now, if they want federal aid, have to do all these tracking and reporting to the federal government. So it's not just the cost of the federal government cost of running a Department of Education. It's the cost burden they impose upon the school districts because they tell these school districts, well, if you want all of this federal money, you need to generate this report and that report, and you give us this report. And so I think that's why you're seeing this growth of administrative overhead within our school system. So again, on inflation-adjusted cost, we've gone from 5,845 per student to 16,280, which is more than it costs to put a kid through college these days. And I've got the link in Producer Suit. If you can put this up on the website at JerzeeJoe.com, you can see that. All right. So does the government ever lie?
All the time.
All right. So this is a phone call with Representative Congressional Representative Thomas Massie. And somebody brought to his attention something on the CDC website about the COVID vaccine trial data. And one of his supporters from his home district said, I don't think this is correct. Can you check with the CDC? Well, they actually got him on the phone and he recorded the phone call. And here's what the CDC told him about that questionable data.
Had COVID. Yep. When the vaccines came out, he wondered, would he benefit from getting vaccinated on top of it? He looked at the studies and saw there was no benefit. And yet he saw the CDC putting out false information under the guise of their scientific committee that said there is a benefit shown in the studies, which he knew wasn't true.
Right.
So he's calling them and recording the conversation surreptitiously, getting this typical doublespeak from the government. They act like you're kind of stupid when you do this. You're so smart that you found this mistake in our work that nobody else found. We're going to call you Eagle Eye Massey, they said. From now on, admitted ultimately that it wasn't true. kept trying to argue that it would confuse the public if they put the real information out there. And he's pressing and pressing them as they're admitting it's wrong, with an addendum people should listen to. After admitting to him on the phone that they knew this information was false, the next day, the same scientists and CDC officials did a webinar for doctors that repeated the misinformation. So now you have proof positive. It's no accident that they're pretending the vaccine proved effective for people who'd already had COVID. At a time when, let's say at the time we thought the vaccine might work and there was a shortage. So Massey's argument was, you're telling people who've already had COVID to go get a precious resource there's not enough of, instead of saving it for the old people who may need it. So that's what the conversation was about.
All right, this is great.
This call with CDC's Washington, D.C. Director, Anstis Brand.
If there's a they who is refusing to fix something that is factually and provably wrong, I want to know who they is. Because this is going to result, and it's already resulting, in misallocation of the vaccine.
Well, let me check that and get back to you as soon as possible.
Massey also argued the point in a call with Dr. Sarah Oliver, the CDC scientist who gave the misinformation on the web video.
Hi, this is Congressman Thomas Massey. Is this Dr. Oliver?
Yeah.
There was an error, and I noticed you're an author on it, and I wondered if I could get your help in getting this error corrected. You can't say it's efficacious for people with prior infection. That's an absolutely untrue sentence.
Yeah, I mean, we're still recommending that individuals who had prior infection receive the vaccine. But we wouldn't want to put out that if you've had COVID before, you shouldn't get the vaccine.
Actually, if you've had COVID before and there's a 75-year-old person who can't get the vaccine and you're 30 years old, you should not get the vaccine because you are wasting resource. It will lead to people who die or have medical complications because we have a limitation of the vaccine. That's why I think it's important that document get fixed.
Okay, I can talk with MMWR and with Dr. Cohen and see if we can tweak that language a little bit.
We asked CDC, Dr. Oliver, and Dr. Cohen for.
No, by the way, she didn't tell him he wasn't correct. She's basically agreeing that he's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Interviews, but they decline. Some of the agency's response was summed up during Congressman Massey's final call with CDC this past week. It was with CDC Principal Deputy Director Ann Schuchat.
I feel like right now we have the tail wagging the dog, that the folks who want to do the messaging, the folks who want everybody to get the vaccine, have pressured the folks who are doing the science, i.e. reviewing the phase 3 trial from Pfizer, not to correct the document. But the document is false. So the CDC can do whatever messaging they want. That's the CDC's job, not my job. But they cannot propagate false and incorrect science. So that's my position. And I'm really disappointed it's gone on a month without being fixed. Like, really disappointed.
You note correctly, there is not sufficient.
And I won't play the rest of it, but she's not disagreeing. And she just confirmed, as you note correctly. And if you want to hear the whole thing, it goes on for about another minute and a half. But he's basically called them out. They have false and misleading data on their website, or they did. It's all water under the bridge now. And they acknowledge it's false information. And this second phone call you just heard, this is a month later after the first phone call where they admit it. Yep, you're right. That's not correct. We'll see if we can get it fixed. And a month later, they still have. Not only do they still have the same incorrect data on the website, they are then giving a webinar to doctors, and they're repeating this false information to doctors a few days later in a webinar. So that's the CDC not only publishing bogus information, but even after they've agreed that it is bogus, they refuse to correct it. So that's your federal government at work. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of not surprised.
Kind of not surprised. All right. So let's move on to another tragic, and I'm shaking my head. So 9 months ago in Washington, D.C., there was a group of teenage girls And I think one of them was only 14 when this happened. Um, they basically beat a disabled 62-year-old man to death because they were bored. They literally kicked him in the face, kicked him in the head, stomped on him, and they killed him because they were bored. Uh, can you, I mean, what's happening to the way we're bringing up kids where we're bored? What are we going to do? Oh, yeah, let's go beat this guy to death. They found him in
Yeah.
an alley and they literally kicked him, stomped on his head and kicked him. Internal bleeding, they kicked him in the stomach and the liver and the kidneys, head trauma, internal bleeding, and the guy died. Um, and I'm just shaking my head. I just can't fathom any children, any kids I grew up with, any kids I know, any kids in my family would even think about beating an old man, a disabled old man to death because they had nothing better to do. Any thoughts on where our
Yeah, it's like, what does your mother know you're doing this? Like, what does your mother say about this?
well, uh, how were they brought up where they thought this was okay? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just flabbergasted, absolutely flabbergasted. So again, you didn't hear that story on TV, did you?
No, I didn't.
All right. Yeah, so Washington, D.C., it's not like this happened in some backwoods town. This was Washington, D.C., a group of teenage girls, the youngest being 14, beat this old man to death because they had nothing better to do. And we've got the link to that story if you want to read all the gory details. All right. So you said you're a candle burner, huh?
Yeah, yeah, almost every night, especially in the winter.
Well, listen carefully.
Burning candles in your home. Why not? When you light a candle, you're not just liberating fragrance chemicals, but there also is toluene, benzene, and other toxic chemicals that are known to be human carcinogens through the route of inhalation being released into the air. We don't necessarily need candles anymore, but people use them for religious reasons. There's many reasons to use candles. But when you are using a conventional candle with synthetic dyes, petroleum-based wax, and synthetic undisclosed fragrance in particular, you're releasing particulate matter, ultrafine particulate matter, which is the most hazardous type. So we really need to be careful, especially if you have kids. These chemicals are not just staying in the air, they attach to house dust and deposit on the surfaces of your home. So if you have a baby that's crawling around on the floor, putting things in his or her mouth, they're inhaling all of this and ingesting all of these particles. They cannot detoxify the way that adults can. Their bodies are developing, and these early life exposures have lifelong consequences.
So now she does make a distinction. Now, if you have natural wax, beeswax candles, natural wax candles, they're great. But if you have, well, let me stop this. But if you have candles that are made from, petroleum products, and by the way, Vaseline, as an example, is a petroleum product.
Yep.
Um, so, if you're going to burn candles, occasionally, yeah, one or two candles occasionally, no big deal. But if you have small children and you light candles on a regular basis, you shouldn't be using candles with made from petroleum products, particularly with the fragrance. So, any thoughts on that candle story?
Yeah, I was just Googling the ingredients in the candles that I burn, and primary ingredient is paraffin wax, which is the petroleum byproduct.
Yep. And
that
then
releases chemicals like benzene, toluene. Yep.
Toluene. And if you have fragrance, again, the fragrances are, so anyway, so
Yep.
just a word to the wise. All right. How much time we got left?
About 6 minutes.
All right. Real quick, world record rifle shot. Team in Wyoming set a new record, the longest rifle shot. Now the target was 8x8. That's about the size of a small mail truck, right? 8 foot by 8 foot.
Yeah.
The back of a small mail truck. The new record they set was 4.4 miles.
Wow.
And the flight time of the bullet was 24 seconds. From the time they fired the gun till it hit the target was 24 seconds. And that time was so long that the team had to take into account the rotation of the Earth. They had to compensate for the rotation of the Earth during the bullet's flight time. So that's the new world record, 4.4 miles with a rifle to hit an 8 foot by 8 foot target. Pretty impressive, I think. Oh, by the way, they did it in Wyoming, where the elevation was 7,000 feet. You know why that helped them do that?
No. Why does that? The air is lighter.
Air is thinner, and thinner air is less drag on the bullet, so the bullet doesn't slow down as fast because of less drag. Anyway, so that's the new record. Finally, before we get to our taxpayer relief shot, in Chicago, there's a story. there's pictures when containers come off a ship, they go onto a train, and then the trains go to rail yards, and then whatever rail yard it is, Denver, Chicago, Louisville, eventually those containers get lifted off the trains and put onto tractor trailers for local delivery. Well, in Chicago, the thieves aren't waiting for the containers for the merchandise to get. What they're doing is these trains are parked in the rail yard either overnight or early in the morning. They're actually going in with bolt cutters and they're cutting open the locks on the containers while they're still on the train looking for stuff to steal. In the picture I have, they found now if they open one up and it's furniture and couches, they're not going to, they're not going to steal that. But they found one that was full of flat screen TVs, and there's this picture of about nine guys just carrying off flat screen TVs from the shipping container that's still on the train in the rail yard. So, and by the way, do you think that you wind up paying for that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the manufacturer is going to increase their costs.
Right. Or the shipping or the rail yard is going to, if they have to pay for it, they're going to have to up their shipping costs. So one way or the other, you pay for that. All right. Taxpayer relief shots. I know we're running short on time. Just real quick, here's why we call them taxpayer relief shots. Here we go.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
All right. So this one comes to us from Florida, where three guys break into this one guy's house. And they know he's in there, by the way. So this is not like, oh, we thought the house was empty. They knew he was in there. So they came in with the intention of overpowering him.
Are dead after an alleged home invasion in Pasco County. Investigators say the homeowner shot and killed them as they tried to break in. A third intruder was also shot and is now facing charges. ABC Action News reporter Eric Waxler sorting through all the details of exactly what happened out there. Eric?
Yeah, Wendy, the homeowner here will not be charged, according to the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, but the investigation does continue. In fact, the Sheriff's Office has been here since early this morning, gathering evidence at this home on Audrey Road in Land O'Lakes. Sheriff Chris Nacco says that the homeowner was home here playing video games when he heard glass break. He got his own gun, and then he saw a masked man in a hallway with a gun pointed at him. He shot him. Investigators say the homeowner shot two other men who were with him, killing one who shot at him and wounding the other. The injured man is in the hospital, but will face 2 counts of second-degree homicide because the men that he was with were killed during this home invasion.
Second Amendment allows you to protect yourself by carrying and bearing arms. In his home, he protected himself. And that's something our citizens in Pasco County will do. And I've seen it happen before in the past. And unfortunately, I think it may have to happen in our future.
Sheriff Nacco also says there was some type of relationship between the homeowner and the men who broke in, but they have maybe were after the homeowner's guns that he admitted he shows off on social media. The two men that died were both 21 years old, and according to the sheriff's office, had a extensive and violent criminal history. Live in Pasco County, Eric Waxler, ABC Action News.
So 2 messages. Don't broadcast the fact that you have guns on social media. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
You make yourself a target. But here's my other thought. So 3 guys with guns break into your house shooting at you. Wow, am I so happy that in this state you can only have a 10-round magazine in your gun? Don't you think you might want to have more than 10 rounds in your gun if you're facing 3 armed intruders?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, so we had an interesting visitor here the other day. So, as we're approaching election day, it's not unusual for representatives, Congress people, whatever, to help their respective political parties to help, go out and do speeches and rally up the, troops for them. But AOC was in town the other day.
Really?
Now, AOC is a New York representative. Yep. What is she doing in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, great question. By the way, here in the New York City area, they're actually using her advocacy of one of the other Democrat candidates as a weapon against the candidate because she comes on. I think his name Mondaire Brown or whatever his name is, and they're actually slamming this guy because he's been endorsed by AOC. So it's like, do you really want AOC endorsing you because they're actually using her endorsement as a tool against this guy in an election ad. So
Yeah, well, AOC was here in town the other day. It was Friday night, to support Kamala Harris, and I'm thinking, why is AOC in Pennsylvania when she belongs in New York? She's a representative of the state of New York,
New York.
so think of the taxpayer money that was used for her security and her travel to come here.
Yep, it's a crazy time. That's why I can't wait for this election season to be over. All right, anything else you want to add?
Nope, it is absolutely gorgeous outside. The leaves are in. I was driving from from here to Harrisburg and back again, and through the mountains. Oh, central Pennsylvania, absolutely spectacular.
Take any pictures?
I did try to take some pictures while I was driving.
Don't do that. Not while you're driving. All right. Anyway, I know we're running out of time. Thanks for giving up 30 minutes out of your day. If you want to see any of the links in a day or two, producer Susan will have them up on the Jerzee Joe website. And that's JerzeeJoe.com. And Jerzee is spelled Jerzee. Jer as in Robert, Z as in zebra, double E, JerzeeJoe.com. If you want to send in your vote for the stupidest thing I heard all week, it's just send it to joe@JerzeeJoe.com, and we'll let you know the result of our vote next week. And other than that, producer Susan, you have anything you want to add?
Nope. Enjoy this beautiful weather while it lasts.
You too, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.